All right, everybody, we are back with yet another of my xTool F1 Ultra brass coin embossing videos. I'm going to demonstrate the current state of the art, I guess you could say, as to what I think the best settings are for the xTool F1 Ultra. As you can see, I am in the XCS software. I am in, what version am I in? I'm in 2.3.7. This is beta software, but what you see in here will be in the future releases. So let's go ahead and get started. Today I'm going to be making a Santa Claus design, and so right here from my dashboard, normally you will start in process on a flat surface mode. We're going to go ahead and change that to embossment down here. So let's get that changed. I'm going to go ahead and drag in a file here, test file for demonstration purposes only. All right. And so the first thing I'm going to do, the very first thing before I do anything else, and you should always do this, is going to go ahead and home my laser. We're going to Z-axis home on it, which is going to drop the laser head as far down as it can possibly go. Now right now I have the fluted base in there with the flutes facing backwards. You can't see this, of course, because all you can see is what's on my screen, but I'm going to go ahead and put a coin inside my machine, and I'm going to line it up underneath the blue dot. The red dot is going to be all the way off to the right because obviously I have homed it. And so the fluted base is 18.5 millimeters tall with the feet on it, and then the coin itself is 2.2 millimeters, but we lose 1/10 of a millimeter on that inner rim. So I'm going to add 18.5 plus 2.1, which should bring me to 20.6. So we're going to go ahead and raise my laser head up, and when I do that, that dot is dead center with the blue. So I got the blue and the red sitting on top of each other. I have a purple dot on my laser. Let's go ahead and take a picture of the background here. And while it's doing that, these rounds are 40 millimeters. So my test file here is just barely a little over 40 millimeters. I'm sorry, you can see there's a little gap here. So if I shrink this down to 40, in theory, this will line up absolutely perfectly. Now, in practice, you might want to adjust it just a little bit. I'm going to pull it in just a bit. Now, this on the screen is pretty much in the center. But if I actually want it to be perfectly centered, I'm going to select the artwork itself, hit the down arrow, and choose Align Center. As you can see in the picture, my coin is a little bit off to the side. Now there's two ways I can fix this. The first way is to go ahead and turn on framing, and we're going to set it to outline. And if I hit this button now, it's going to draw the little blue circle where the laser is going to hit, and I can move the coin. But there's a better way, I think. This is my preferred way, is I actually select the item and I hit framing. And now if I look at my laser, I've got the circle there, but instead of moving the coin, I'm going to move the circle. So I've selected this, and I'm just going to hit my arrow keys on my keyboard and move that circle until it is exactly where I want it to go. And so now it is perfectly lined up. A little bit more right there. That's beautiful. So it is perfectly lined up for where it is focused, 20.6. It is absolutely perfect. If I were to hit go right now, obviously it's not going to do anything because I don't have my parameters on, but if I did have my parameters set, it would be dead center on the coin. So what we're going to do now is actually set our parameters. And so what I'm going to do, first things first, I do have this saved, but I'm just going to go through these with you real quick. I'm going to change this from blue light to fiber IR, obviously, because we're working with a brass coin. Next, layers is going to be 256. I'm going to crank the power all the way to the maximum. Now, in previous versions of this, these files, I was actually doing multiple passes at a higher speed and not descending on the Z-axis. But I'm actually going to change that this time. Instead of doing what I was before, which was at 600 millimeters per second, I'm actually going to do it at half of the speed and only one pass. Okay, now the reason why will be explained here shortly. But anyways, I'm going to go ahead and set this up 300 millimeters per second, and I'll explain what every one of these means here in just a second. But 300 millimeters per second, 1 pass, 200 lines per centimeter, and I'm going to change my engraving angle to 75, and I'm going to descend on the z-axis every 4 layers. Okay, let's explain what each of these does. Now, this is what's called a depth map. The highest points are in white and the lowest points are in black. So if I actually look at this emboss right now, you'll see, of course, it's got text across it, but the lowest points are where it's darkest in the image. I can't move this out of the way, but you get the idea. And you probably already know how this works, being that you're using the system. The highest points are the text because they are white, as you can see. They are the highest points. So setting this to 256 means that there are 256 levels from the darkest black all the way to the highest white. Okay? If you want good quality, you almost have to go with 256 layers. Power is pretty self-explanatory. It is punching it at full force, 100%. Okay, speed, millimeters per second speed. All right, this one is interesting. Okay, if you watch the laser as it goes across the coin, it's going to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, right? And the speed at which it goes back and forth is the speed in millimeters per second. If you could slow down time and zoom in with a microscope, you wouldn't see just a laser beam going back and forth. You would see it turn on here and then turn off and move over a little bit and turn on and turn off and turn on. It's pulsing, it's zapping it, pow, 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 as it goes back and forth. It just goes back and forth so fast that it's really hard to see. The slower this speed is, the more energy it is able to hit that brass with. And every packet of energy that hits that brass, it's going to evaporate a little bit of the surface. Okay, that's what the speed is. If I crank this up to 10,000, it's just going to be a line. You won't see anything. This is right across there, and it's not even going to touch the surface of this. I find that 300 millimeters per second is perfect for brass. Now, in the past, I had done 600 millimeters per second and had 2 passes. Passes is pretty self-explanatory. It goes across once, it goes across again. You know, after it finishes doing it, it'll do it a second time. Okay? So it goes all the way from top to bottom, back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and then it comes back up and it does a second pass. There's a reason why we're not doing that, and it has to do with the descend on z-axis. Give me just a second. Instead of doing 600 millimeters per second and going over it twice, we're going to do 300 millimeters and just go over it once. Okay? Lines per centimeter is how many back and forth lines it does in a centimeter. Okay? So every time the laser gets from the right to the left, that counts as 1 line. And then it goes back and does the right to left, right to left, right to left, right to left. And it does that 200 times in the space of about a centimeter, which is right about, I don't know, here, somewhere around here. So there'll be 200 back and forth lines till it gets to this point. The higher this number, the finer the quality. But you reach a point at which it just doesn't get any better. All right. Once you reach that point, there's no real sense in increasing the lines per centimeter, and it's just not worth it. And I find that the best lines per centimeter at this speed setting is 200. Okay. Engraving angle, that's one that nobody seems to understand. So let me explain how that works. When it first starts up, it's going either from left to right or up to down, depending on what version of the software you're in. This version of the software actually starts on this side going up, down. But either way, as it goes back and forth, it gets to the very bottom, all right? Well, then it starts the next pass, and in this case, it's going to start 75 degrees, all right? And then the next pass will be 75 more degrees, so it'll come up this way, back and forth, and then come up at this angle. If you had this at a really shallow angle, like 10, after it did the left to right, the next time it would just barely be at an angle. So that's what the engraving angle is. I like 75. You can use whatever you want to use. Okay, but it seems to me I get better results with 75. Frequency in kilohertz, 30. So kilohertz is the number of times something happens per second times 1,000. So 30,000 times per second, that laser is turning on and off and on and off and on and off and on and off as it goes back and forth and back and forth. The higher this number, the faster it's pulsing and the less energy hits the brass. Now we want to hit this thing as hard as we can. That's why we're at 100% power and 30 kilohertz. I have never changed this, and I probably never will. Okay, so now we're at the one that causes the most confusion, and that is the descend at the z-axis for every n layers. Okay, there is a glitch in the system when you have multiple passes and descend. It's going to cause an issue, and you can physically feel this if you touch the back of the laser head between passes. You'll notice after a layer, right, if you've only got it set to one pass and you say descend every 4 layers, it's going to do layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, layer 4, descend. Layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, layer 4, descend. All right, it counts to 4, and then it will drop the laser head by 0.01 millimeters. Okay, seems pretty straightforward. But if you've got multiple passes turned on, let's say 2 passes, it's going to do this twice once you reach that 4th layer. So it'll do layer 1, nothing. Layer 2, nothing. Layer 3, nothing. Layer 4, descend, right? But then for each pass, it counts it. So it should be layer 1, and then layer 1 pass 2. Layer 2, layer 2 pass 2. Layer 3, layer 3 pass 2. Layer 4, descend. Layer 4 pass 2, descend. Okay, does that make sense? It actually descends, it counts that 4th layer twice and descends both times. So, okay, well you might be thinking, all right, well, what's the big deal with that? You can just divide this number by 2, right? Well, what happens if you're only descending it every 2 layers? Well, then you're literally, it counts like you're almost like you're descending it every time. The real problem, though, is at the end of the file, when that laser head goes back up, it does not take into account the fact that it went 2 times on every 4th layer. It only does it 1 time every 4th layer. So let's say you want to do 2 coins. The first coin will work perfectly, but the second coin will be out of focus because you had multiple passes and it was descending multiple times when it should have only been descending every 4 layers. Does that make sense? So maybe they'll get that fixed one of these days, but for now, either do multiple passes or descend, right? I have found that descending the laser is the best option. So we're going to set this back to 1, and that's why we slowed it down to 300. The speed is the same, 300 with 1 pass or 600 with 2 passes. You'll get the same result, so why even mess with multiple passes? This allows me to descend it every 4 layers. So what ends up happening here is this is going to punch down into the brass coin. We want it to go maybe about 0.5 millimeter. So if we bring up my calculator here, all right, you've got 256 layers, and it's going to go down by 0.01 millimeters every 4 layers. So let's divide 256 by 4, right? That's 6.4, all right? So it is going to do 6.4 times 0.01. So this is going to descend the laser head by 0.64 of a millimeter over the course of 256 layers. And that keeps it pretty darn in focus on the way down. So now the trick is to make sure your laser is dead on focused, and you will get maximum punch on that brass coin. And you can see the pictures in my actual item for sale on the Design Find website. These coins come out amazing when you follow these settings. Okay, so just remember, and they're going to be saved in the files as well. 256 layers, 100% power, 300 millimeters per second at 1 pass, 200 lines per centimeter, engraving angle of 75, frequency of 30 kilohertz, descending on the z-axis every 4 layers, by 0.01 millimeters. And now when you run this file, it's gonna tell you, I think it's gonna take about maybe 4.5 or 5 hours. We'll see here when it does the preview. Okay, calculating the length of time it's going to take, and we've got 5 hours 39 minutes. That's not too bad. That's 339.5 minutes, basically 339.5 minutes. This is going to be a beautiful coin when it's done, and most coins, if they are properly most designs, if they are properly set up, will look absolutely amazing using these settings. And so anyways, if you have any questions, drop me a line. You can get a hold of me on the Design Find website. You can send me messages. Check me out. My name is Glass Panther, and I hope this has been of some help to you. So anyways, stay tuned. I got more great stuff coming, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.